Hey everyone, on this lesson we are going to solve the question F of this problem 2. On the previous lecture we saw the configuration of the research laboratory of the Riverside. We saw also the web server, okay, and how this laboratory network was connected to the geo service. And so now in this question F, okay, it states it is desired to move the home subnet to the lab as this subnet with this IP address 147.83.130.92 with a mask of 26 bits, so we will have 26 bits for the net ID. And so to do this, a tunnel is configured between the router lab and the Wi-Fi home routers. And the tunnel uses this IP address in here, this subnet address with this mask with a /30, which is 30 bits for the net ID. And so the question F is a very simple and short question, and this is to complete the router or lab routing table, right? So we have this router, okay, the R lab router that is connected with this research laboratory, and so we have these entries, okay. These are connections that are directly connected to this router. That's why the gateway is not indicated. And so we need to complete this routing table. Of course, we were going to add some entries in here, and also we need to analyze, because at the end, okay, what happens? Well, remember that every router needs the default route definition. The default route is the route that we go when all of the other entries were not reached. And so we have the default route, which is always the IP address 0000 and the mask also 0. Okay. Of course, we will need to indicate the gateway, so also we are going to indicate the gateway for the default route. So which entries are we going to add in this table? Well, if we connect, okay, the home subnet that we already saw initially in this problem, okay, and if we connect this home subnet, and more precisely, we want to move this home subnet to the laboratory subnet, okay, with this IP address, then of course, we are going to have a subnet inside this research laboratory network, and so this subnet is going to be connected to this router, the router laboratory. Now, what is important to know here and to pay close attention is that this is done using a tunnel. This is a tunnel that we are using. Remember, we already explained the mechanism of tunneling. This is a transmission of data intended for use only within a private, usually a corporate network, through a public network in such a way that the routing nodes in the public network are unaware that the transmission is part of the private network. Here on this figure, we see an example where the router 1 and the router 2, they are connected using tunnel. So since we are going to connect, okay, the Wi-Fi home routers with the router lab using tunneling, then the entry for this subnet in here, which is the subnet, okay, of the home subnet, will have a gateway, and this gateway is going to be the tunnel. And so since this tunnel network has a mask of 30 bits of the net ID, remember, if we have 30 bits of the net ID, it means that we have only 2 bits for the host ID, and this is because all IP addresses occupy 32 bits, so 32 bits minus 30, this leaves us with 2 bits for the host ID. And how many interfaces can we configure with 2 bits? Well, 2 raised to 2, right? However, we need to remove the network address, okay, combination, which is the combination where all of the bits of the host ID are 0, and the broadcast address combination, where all of the bits of the host ID are 1, right? So as we know, we have 2 bits, okay, for the host ID, since this is a network address, okay, that uses a mask of 30 bits for the net ID. So since all IP addresses occupy 32 bits, so 32 minus 30, this gives us 2 bits for the host ID. And so the possible combinations for these 2 bits of the host ID is basically 2 raised to 2, which gives us 4 combinations. The combination 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. And so remember that this is the combination for the subnet address, network address, and this is the combination for the broadcast address. This leaves us only with 2 possible interfaces, and this is the number 1 in decimal, this is the number 2 in decimal, right? So essentially, if we have here, imagine, okay, we have here the home Wi-Fi router, and here we have the lab. Let's just name this to be the R lab, and these are connected using a tunneling. Then we can use, for instance, this interface to be 10, 0, 0, 1, and this is going to be the interface 10, 0, 0, 2, something like this. This is a possible configuration. What is important is that if we want to reach this subnet, okay, which is the subnet of the home subnet, we need to do this through the gateway of the tunnel. This is the most important thing. Okay? We need to use this gateway. So let's study now the solution table. As we have just discussed, if we want to reach this subnet, for the home subnet with this IP address, with this mask /26, we need to use the gateway. So remember that the gateway is always when we reach the router. So this is the routing table of the router of the laboratory, this our lab. So since we want to leave this router to reach this subnet, as we leave this router, okay, we analyze, let's just follow the datagram, we leave the R lab router, okay, and we reach this router that is going to route us to the subnet. But what is basically happening is that we are reaching this gateway. So this is the gateway, very important here. Many people use the gateway as the address, the interface that we leave. This is not true. The gateway is always the interface where we reach. So we reach this router with this interface, and so as we arrive to this router, we have this interface. Then this is the gateway, the interface where we arrive. That is why the gateway here we can see is 10.0.0.2. Right? The interface of this is the tunneling, since we are using the tunneling, and so the other entry that we need to add, of course, is going to be the network of the tunnel. This is the network that we see here. It has a mask of /30, so we specify the mask. Now, of course, this is a directly connected network. Keep in mind that since this is the network of the tunnel, this is the network that we are studying, okay, the network of this tunnel in here, so both routers are directly connected. And so since we are analyzing the routing table of this router, okay, of the laboratory router, it is directly connected to the tunnel network, so there is no gateway. Whenever we have a direct connection, we have no gateway. Again, the interface is the tunnel 0. Finally, in the default route, note that if we want to leave, okay, this research laboratory network and we want to use the default route, we need to reach here the router of the geo service. So as we reach this router, the gateway of the default route is this interface in here, which is a 0.1. Again, we are analyzing the routing table of this router, of the laboratory router, and so we leave this router, okay, and we reach this other with this interface. So always the gateway is the interface where we reach the external router, never the interface of our router, always the interface where we reach to another router. That's why we have here 0.1, which is the gateway that we see on the default route. Carry on. So with this we finish the solution to this question F. As we can see, a very short and simple question where we work with routing tables and also tunneling. We remind the student that you can download both the solution to this question as well as the question statement also on the downloadable documents of this lesson.